You may also see cadence with an added or omitted tone. Oh, again, here's another example from Ravel, the cadence jumping in thirds. And then you also see cadences with their favorite trick, which is to add or omit a tone, and then they'll use it in the cadence itself. So in this case, we've got this 5/7 with an added fourth right here, and then it resolves to 1. So another cadence that you'll see is an added tone. So in this case, we have in 15.22 from the Debussy Minuet, we have this added tone where we have a nice, right? Right? And then he adds in the G and this G. So you've got this added fourth, and then it resolves to a nice G major chord. You may also see just a typical 5/1 perfect authentic cadence, right? Here's our circle progression, 2, 5, 1, very nice. But with this B flat in the key, it's in Mixolydian mode instead of major. So be prepared to see that as well. This is a piece by Eric Satie, who's often categorized. He can be impressionist, or he can be considered a Dadaist composer, who's he's aligned with the absurdists. But a lot of his composition techniques stem from the same techniques that the Impressionists use. We also see, as far as texture, just to obscure it even more, especially when it comes to the actual melody of a piece, you'll see melodic doubling. So in this case, you have a really nice simple line right here. This G, G, C, G, E flat, F, G, A, B, right? And then he'll add a second. So major second, major second, major second, major second. So all the way up. He just adds that major second to it. So another method composers will, impressionist composers will use to sort of obscure the tonality of a piece is in doubling the melody. So in figure 15.4, we get this very simple melody. And then the composer adds a second to it. So this G becomes here it is actually used in a piece by Dufay, much, much earlier, from like the 1500s. So this is not something that never happens. But it's something that, it's another piece of very, very old composition technique that the French pick up again and use in an impressionist piece. So another example of doubling that voice right here. You can see right there, here, and then he's doubling it in octaves as well. Another device that composers use is parallel chords, right? And this is exactly what you've been trained not to do in all of your compositions, which is create parallel fifths and parallel octaves. So impressionists are all about parallel fifths and parallel octaves. So all the voices will move down in parallel motion or up in parallel motion, right? So it'll be, if they are doing traditional triads and chords, they'll be moving in parallel motion, basically. And these are all examples of that. And then here's the sarabande. You can see it happening in the flesh with parallel major, minor, seventh chords right here. I'm not even going to attempt to play that. Composers in the Impressionist era are also not
not averse to parallel octaves and fifths. In fact, they incorporate them quite often into their music. So you can see these voices, they'll just move these triads parallel across the piano. So this is figure 15.27. So if we're in the key of C, you can have diatonic chords, right? And it just moves right across. So right, or you can add a 7. Okay, or you can add a tone. Okay?
And here's another example of moving in parallel motion. Right? So all of these chords are moving parallel. So I'll let you read about the history on your own in the book, in the scale and chord vocabulary. However, this little bit right here is a good bit to read. So this is the suggested approach to analysis, because this is a totally different beast. So first of all, rule number 1, establish the scale basis by examination of the music. So it may not be in C major or D major, although often it is, and you can analyze it in that. So if the music is chromatic, try to determine whether the chromaticism is the result of functional chromatic harmony. So does it make sense as far as the way the chords go, or is it non-functional? If the music seems diatonic, so within our normal major and minor system, check first to see if it may be pentatonic, because that still fits into that diatonic system, right? So you can easily overlook it, right? It's super easy. So to look for missing notes. There should be specific notes that are missing from the scale if it's in pentatonic. If it proves to be diatonic, check for a modal versus major-minor basis. So make sure it's major-minor before you start analyzing it major-minor. Make sure it's not some sort of church mode first. Number 2, examine the harmonic vocabulary by looking at prominent chords, right? So check particularly for quartal and quintal sonority. So look for those chords that seem a little bit too spread out. They're not built in thirds. That's a good clue that you're not in your traditional diatonic system. Number 3, if the music is major or minor or functional chromatic, then Roman numeral analysis is appropriate. All right? But if the music contains passages of non-functional harmony, or it's not in a traditional major-minor functional chromatic system, then, do a harmonic reduction and identify each chord by quality. So you don't have to do Roman numerals. You can just worry about doing direct labeling. Okay? Also, if the music falls outside steps 3 and 4, so it's not functional, do a harmonic reduction and resort to direct labeling of scales and chords. And then finally, melodic and rhythmic analysis is little affected by the introduction of new tonal materials and can be done in the usual way. So you can keep your rhythm and melody, all that analysis can be the same. So this just affects the way you analyze the harmony. So we're going to take a little bit of a look, and this is kind of a long piece, so we'll skip around a lot. But this is a piece by Debussy. It's the Engulfed or Sunken Cathedral. Lots of times it'll be written as the Sunken Cathedral. And we're just this is a nice little example of how you should go about analyzing one of these pieces if it's particularly crazy. So you can see what they've done is they've pulled apart all of these chords right here, and they've determined it's based on a G pentatonic scale, right? So G, A, B, D, E. So then they're just taking these and analyzing G, omit the 3, right? So we've got G, D, and G, G, D, G. So there's no B. G, B, D is what it should be. They omitted the B, so you just put G, omit 3. You don't have to put in, a 1 or give it a traditional Roman numeral analysis because it's based on the pentatonic scale, right? Same thing with this. They looked at it's an A with an omitted 3, E omitted 3, G. So it just builds up the pentatonic chord, right, scale with omitted thirds. And then you see this next chord right here. So this is their reduction of it down here. And this is the original. You see it's built in 4s, right? So it's a quartile. Put a little Q right there. You don't have to do anything else. And then the rest, again, built on the same pentatonic scale. All right? Now here, we say that this could possibly be Lydian. So it's F Lydian. And then we're back to an E pentatonic scale. And again, you just have to analyze. Here's our G, E minor 7th chord. And then this is built up on the pentatonic scale again. And then you just write here, the E pedal is established. And you'll see this go right here all the way through the rest of the piece. So there's no completely right or wrong way to do analyses like this. You just have to be scholarly, do the best you can, be smart. So again, they're just generally analyzing this in Lydian, and that's really all they can do. All right, more Lydian. Now we get C major. Nice little C major, but it's all built, these are all built off of, so we have a nice C major chord, and then it's a bunch of quartiles, right? And then we move to pentatonic. So this is basically, the stuff that you're going to see. So just be prepared for these added or omitted chords, things in pentatonic, whole tone, or church mode scales, quartile notes, and yeah. So, and you can see what they do at the very end of this is give a nice big general analysis of the whole entire piece. So in this, it says, although not based for the most part on functional harmony, an overall tonal center, so they decide that an overall tonal center of C emerges. This is primarily due to a bass line in the opening section that descends in stepwise motion from G to C. Right, so that's basically, and sustained C pedals that measure 28 to 41 and 72 to 89. So they've determined that it's generally in C something. And then they show it here. So here's measure 1, 3 here. So here's our descending line down to C, and then again 28, this pedal in C. Okay? So they just call it a C tonal center, which is perfectly acceptable. Sometimes that's all you can come up with. Sometimes that you can't even come up with that.